I would say in today's America, if a white male were to walk into the grocery store with a black kid, right, most of us would automatically deduce that he is caring for that child. If a black man walked into the grocery store with a Caucasian kid, just one-on-one, we would hesitate for a second and wonder, why is he with her, right? And that's what I subconsciously think about.
This is the Adoptive Mom Podcast. Adoption may look different for each family, but we need solidarity from other crazy people who took this leap. And that is what we do here. We encourage, we build up, we share the wins and losses. We lean on each other, and we get through this together. Thanks for joining us. Hello. Welcome to the Adoptive Mom Podcast. This is Season 2, Episode 14, and it's Part 1 of our two-part finale. I'm Alex Fitton. If you didn't know already, I get the honor of hosting this podcast every single week. And the Season 2 is almost over, and we already have a launch time for Season 3, so get excited for that. To finish out this season, we're going to be talking about adoption and race. And I know that that's a super intimidating topic, and trust me, it's a super intimidating topic, especially for a white woman, especially a white woman who has not adopted kids from other ethnicities. But I have friends that have, I have friends that are minorities, and I know how important this conversation is. And I wanted to, I wanted to participate in that, but mostly I wanted to give the floor to voices of color who just have such a heart for these issues and could definitely speak on culture and ethnicity and nationality and all these important things that our kids who are from other countries or just from other ethnicities, they need to know. And we have a responsibility as adoptive parents to be educated on these issues and to be able to be the best parents possible for our children. Today, we're going to be talking to Tim Yayock. Tim is from Nigeria originally. He's been in the States for a little while now. He's married to a Caucasian woman, and they have a mixed family, and they're a foster family. So he's right in the middle of all of this world, and he has a lot of awesome things to say. Later, also, we're going to be talking to Faith Jibas. Faith is Marshallese. She grew up in the States, but she has definitely understood the meaning of family and the meaning of culture and understanding who you are and where your roots are from. And I'm really excited for you guys to hear my interview with her as well. Before we get started, I want to remind you guys about our sponsor for this month. It's Christine Bauer with her book, Those 3 Words. Those 3 words obviously being, you are pregnant. And this book is a memoir of being a birth mom. It's amazing. And you can find a link to it in the show notes, or you can just go on Amazon and search Those 3 Words. So you guys, I'm so excited for you guys to hear it. So let's not wait any longer. Let's get to it.
I think going through life with biracial adoption and, that we all look different affects the way that we do our life in many ways, the way we travel. I know that there's where we currently live, the look of our family is very accepted, and people don't really think twice about it, but we recognize that in other parts of the country, or when we travel and stop at gas stations that are outside of our comfort zone in our home, that not everybody carries, that understanding. And so, I don't know, I think it just makes us very mindful and very sometimes hyper vigilant to, will somebody say something to us at a gas station that, shows judgment or a lack of understanding as to why we would have African American children in our home. Who do we think we are? And so I think that we are just mindful that not everybody has an understanding, loving perception of us adopting outside of our race. And, and we want to be a family that is open and understanding that not everybody is accepting of that. And then they might have really good reasons for that. So we try to not have a spirit of offense, but we recognize that we also want to protect our children at the same time from anybody that might say something that would wound them. You're just very aware of people around you, wondering, are they going to do anything besides stare? And so socially it affects us. We're way more aware of what's going on around us than I think people that do not have families that look different, maybe how they get to walk through life.
Hello, Tim.
Hi, how are you? Thanks. How are you, Alex?
I'm good. We just, his family came over for dinner tonight, so we just had an evening with like a lot of loud children. So.
And dinner was amazing, if I could say.
Well, thank you.
But yes.
The cheesecake that you guys homemade was amazing.
Well, yeah. Gratefully made by, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
We live in Fayetteville. I'm actually born and raised in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. I am an American citizen now, and proud to be. I've been in the U.S. for going on 22 years at this point. I met my wife Ashley about 12 years ago.
Okay.
And we've been married for about 11 years now. And we have...
quick.
I know, right? Yeah. I don't waste time, so...
Well, she's pretty awesome. I imagine you had to nail her down real quick.
Yes. No, you're right. And we have two amazing, beautiful girls. One is 8 and the other is 3. And we also have a foster daughter. I'll just call her Elle.
That's cool. And you're super outnumbered, right? You're the only
100%,
dude.
yes. Yeah. I am a true girl dad.
Yeah?
So that's what I like to. I'm proud to call myself a girl dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You seem pretty good at it, so.
I think. Well, I don't know.
They're all daddy's girls, from what I hear.
Yes. Yeah. They definitely cling on to daddy. So yeah.
Your wife is white,
right?
And then your foster daughter is also white,
correct?
And then your two girls.
And obviously my 2 girls are mixed. Yes. So yes. I'm from Nigeria, like I said a few minutes ago, and so that's in West Africa, 100% black.
No doubt about it.
Right. And just quick blurb in interjection here. When I was in college I went to the U of A, by the way. That's how I ended up in Arkansas. When I was at the U of A, I lived in the dorm my freshman year, and that year I remember I was just talking with friends in the dorm, and one girl, she was telling a story, and she was trying to, obviously she's African American. Mm-hmm. She was telling a story, and was trying to kind of get that relationship of the relevance of the story. And I don't remember what the story was, but at some point she was trying to explain what it meant, and again the relevance, and then she was like, you just won't get it because you're not black. And I looked at her, I was like, whoa. Excuse me? Like,
what?
I am... Anyway.
I don't even understand.
Right. But I mean, I understood what she meant at the time. She meant you're not black as in African-American black, not,
You're not American. Right, you're more on the African side of things.
Exactly. So anyway, it was just, funny interjection there. But yeah, so I'm full-blooded African, and like Alex said at the beginning, I am by true definition an African American. Mm-hmm. And then my wife is Caucasian. Obviously our kids are mixed, and then we do have a full Caucasian foster kid. So.
And you've had other foster kids as well. Have they all also been Caucasian?
So the kid we have right now is our 3rd intake, where this is our 3rd year in foster care system, with the option to adopt, if the opportunity and God were to bless us with that. But so yeah, we have a foster kid, and this is about our 3rd year in the process, mm-hmm. so in the system. And we've had our first intake was a sibling group. They were Caucasian.
Okay.
Our second intake was a mixed kid, similar to our kids. Mm-hmm. And then the kid we have right now is she's full-blooded Caucasian. Yeah.
Awesome. So, okay, you mentioned that you came here from Nigeria in college, and now that's kind of like at the beginning of the story, and then now you're in the foster care world. So what about the in between? Tell us about just how you got to this point, and maybe some of your struggles with foster care. I know that you and I have talked before, right. And you definitely have some interesting stories. Some of them are funny, and some of them are funny sad. So let's get into that.
like I said, I came here 1996. Yeah, I know.
If someone were to do the math.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's fine. If you can figure it out, more power to you. But yeah, so I came here to go to college at the U of A, and bachelor's degree. Whoa, I just moved the mic. Bachelor's degree, master's, a second master's degree, and then obviously, labor force and work and making a living and all that good stuff. Obviously, through all that, I met my wife. I met Ashley, and got married. We actually didn't have kids for 3 years after we got married. And then, obviously, like any other couple, you have the discussions of how many kids do you want to have and things like that. And in that conversation, we talked about being open to adoption. If thankfully, we're blessed. We don't have an issue with, having kids of our own. So we're grateful for that. But we just still had that conversation. If the opportunity for us to adopt down the road, at some point in our lives, that we would be open to do so.
And was your faith a part of that conversation back then, or did that come later?
Honestly, I think that came later.
Okay.
I would say faith wasn't really a huge factor or a deciding factor for us at the time. But that came later on,
right.
Just in our relationship as a couple, and then just, with kids and trying to raise them in a structured environment and such. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But then I will say, about 3+ years ago, we kind of got into the conversation about foster care. Excuse me. And I will be completely honest and transparent. I want us to bite off what we can chew, kind of thing. So I don't want to take on more than we can handle and overwhelm ourselves. And, there's an impact not just to Ashley and myself, but to our own bio kids. I think that's kind of where I come from with, just trying to be more, I don't want to say controlling, but just mindful of, okay, we have one kid now, my phone, both our phones ding feels like every hour because, the social services is looking for placement of another kid. And, it just tugs at your heartstrings. But, you have to, you almost have to, I hate to almost turn a blind eye, but not necessarily that. You just have to realize, okay, this is what we can handle, and we're at capacity, if you will, and but
I almost think that's better in a way, because it's not that your heart's not in this clearly,
right? But
if both of you were like yes to everything, then that would be
right.
completely overwhelming. And I think that as the Papa Bear of the family, I see that so often, is that the guy is like, okay, but I got to protect the flock here.
Yeah, and I mean, there are people out there that can handle that. There are people out there that have. I mean, we've met people that have multiple foster kids. With them in addition to their bio kids. There are people. I mean, you guys have. I feel like you guys have been through more than we have. So I don't know that I can speak.
We never fostered though, so
no. But still, I mean, it's still the same process. With bringing in a kid that really you don't know, right? And loving on that child, and just providing that environment for them to flourish, and have that sense of family, that connectivity, and all of that. So I think fostering, adoption, yes, they're not really the same, but I think at the basis, the bottom line, really,
right.
it's really this: you're providing a safe space for kids that have no other option.
You're still you're taking something that's not natural, and you're making it natural for you.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So okay, and tell us about some of the difficulties that you've had with being a multiracial family, and with your foster care experiences. Right.
So, yes, as I said, the first intake we had were a sibling group, brother and sister. We only had them for like 3-4 weeks, I believe. And that was overwhelming for me. A, it was our first intake. We had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah.
And B, it was 2 kids at the same time.
You were immediately double outnumbered.
Yep. And then C, there was a boy involved. And I am, like I said, I'm a girl dad. So I was overwhelmed. Like,
you're like, what do I do with this?
I don't know what to do with this. He has too much energy. Like, he wants to just do stuff that I'm not used to. So yeah, it just kind of threw me off. And, you know, you can see God at play, because I think he could tell that we were getting burned out pretty quick. And he made it possible to where they were able to move on to stay with a relative, you know, 3-4 weeks into care with us.
Yeah.
So I think that was, you know, kind of teased, like that was God's way of saying, here's a little teaser of what, you know, what to expect with foster, you know, the foster system. But yeah, just my experience with being a multiracial family in this process. Honestly, I don't know. I try not to be naive in a sense, but I honestly, I try not to think of it as a color thing or as a racial thing, or I prefer, you know, I want to take in a black kid or a mixed kid, or you know, like I when Asha and I talked about this years ago, that was not even a factor. Like, we didn't, you know, say, what's your preference? What's my, you know, it's
always such an awkward question when they ask you and you're like, none, I don't know. Like,
right. I remember when we were going through training, and you know, you have to go spend like 8 hours a day on a Saturday and a Sunday,
right?
In a classroom, or not classroom, but, you know, a location with other potential foster families. And that, you know, that question would come up, or that they would ask the families that were in training what your preference was, and this. And I remember, you know, there were some families that had a preference of, you know, we're looking for only Caucasian kids, or we're looking for, you know, only, you know, Hispanic kids, and so on. And I remember thinking, like, what's wrong with you, kind of thing. And but then sitting where I sit today, in, you know, I don't claim to have a ton of experience in foster care, but just sitting where I sit today, I appreciate those people that do say, my preference is this, or my preference is that. And not taking that as truly I only want white kids because I like white kids, or I only want black kids because I like black kids. That's what I know. That's, you know, as a person, this is what I know. This is what I know. If I were to take in a kid that looks like me, that I can relate with in that sense, I can give that kid everything that they would need to flourish. Right. As, you know, whether it's foster care or adoption or whatever it is, I can give them what they would need to flourish, because we can connect in that manner. Right. So again, I try not to be naive in that sense, but I think I can appreciate, you know, the people that, I mean, there's nothing wrong if you are Caucasian and you prefer to have Caucasian kids. I say that's totally fine. Like, I don't see the problem with, at least you're opening your home, you're opening your hearts to someone, to a kid that needs help. Sadly, we live in a time in a society today where everything is, you know, we filter everything almost through a lens of, you know, are you coming from this angle of race, or, you know, ethnicity and such, to where if someone were to hear that, you know, in a classroom or in a class setting, I only want, you know, this kind of child, then we automatically filter you through that lens. Right. You know,
or is it just a defensive posture at that point?
Exactly. And I did that. That's exactly my point. Like, I did that when I was in that classroom setting. But then coming out of it and being in the, you know, in the process, it doesn't matter. Honestly, like, I have a Caucasian kid right now who has been with us for a year and a half. Well, no, she's a year and a half. She's been with us for a year and 2 months now, and she's a total daddy's girl. Yeah. And I 100% love it. I mean, it doesn't, like, I look at her like she doesn't care. She has no issues with the fact that she and I don't look anything alike. And I love that. Yeah. And it's fascinating. Like, I get so much joy when we're in public and people are trying to make, you know,
they're trying to figure it out.
They look at the dynamic of, you know, me, you know, Ashley, my wife, and then our two girls, and then our foster daughter, and they're trying to figure out what's the relation, like, who is, yeah. And it's like, you can tell people are just puzzled and are trying to do the math, trying to, dissect what, who could be with who, especially when we go, maybe we're at dinner or something with Ashley's family. Obviously they're all Caucasian, and then there's, so many Caucasian folks, a couple of mixed kids, and then one full-blooded black guy. And and the kid, the youngest of all, is sitting next to the black guy in a high chair.
I can just imagine being in the restaurant, and I think I would be the same way. Like, okay, what's
you're
going
trying
on
to figure
here?
out, like, who does she belong to? Yeah, so I get a lot of joy just with that. Yeah.
What are some of the struggles that you've had? I know that you've had some fun, like, grocery store experiences and stuff like that, and I mean, I'd like to get into a little bit of that, because I think that a lot of our listeners are adoptive parents, and maybe they're looking at this just not knowing another perspective, and they're kind of not knowing what to do, and they want to do the right thing, but are afraid to ask, or haven't been handed the tools. And so that's part of what I want to get at, or that's mostly what I want to get into tonight. And you are so unique in this situation because you are in the adoption world, and you can also speak to this firsthand.
Right. So yeah, I think, like I've said probably a couple of times so far, I try not to be naive with reality, right? There are things that I am very conscious of, and I am very mindful of in just my everyday activity. I pick them up. So our youngest, Bio, and our foster daughter go to daycare together. They attend the same daycare, and I pick them up 3-4 days a week. I drop them off and pick them up from daycare on my way to work, and obviously coming home from work. And I drop them off. And then there are times when on my way home, I stop to pick them up, and I think, we need something. There's some kind of grocery item that we need for the house. And like, we're out of dog food, for example, or we're out of milk, and we need
just
milk.
Like a catastrophe.
Right. We cannot get home with no milk. Subconsciously, I am aware that if I'm stopping in the grocery store with our foster daughter, that I'm going to get those looks that I described earlier, and I don't know what that means.
Well, and without Ashley there too, there's
exactly. Right. I don't know what that means. Right. I don't know what potential risk I am putting, not just myself, but them as well. In that someone may not trust that I am,
that you have legal charge of her.
I am playing a role that I'm, the factual role that I'm playing in, with my kids, essentially. Excuse me. So I subconsciously think of this, and with that, I then plan my day to leave early enough so that I can stop at the grocery store ahead of picking them up and then going home.
Which, let's just be real here. I mean, unless you do not, you guys can't see him, but he does not look like a creeper. And unless a white dude really looked like a creeper, that's not something he would have to worry about.
Right. And I would say in today's America, if a white male were to walk into the grocery store with a black kid, right, most of us would automatically deduce that he is caring for that child.
Right.
If a black man walked into the grocery store with a Caucasian kid, just one-on-one, no other family or anyone else with them, we would hesitate,
right,
for a second and wonder, why is he with her, right? And that's what I subconsciously think about in deciding, can I go to the grocery store with her? Should I go to the grocery store with her? Even though I know I can, like, there's no one stopping me from doing so, but
right.
it's that wonder of, if someone calls the cops, then what? Like, how, do I want to have to deal with that? Do I want to have to, just because someone suspects that I have someone's kid that is obviously not mine? So I just, those are things that I'm aware of.
Well, and you would never want Fiona
exactly.
to think there's something wrong with you or the situation.
And that's exactly why, like on my way home from work, I do the math of, should I pick him up and then go to the grocery store? Or should I try to go to the grocery store first and then pick him up? And yeah, that's exactly the reason why I think through those things before I leave the office for the day to go.
Right.
Right.
Well, and it takes a stressful situation and just makes it worse. And I know that you have another story too that involves a nightmare for any parent, which is taking more than one child into any sort of restaurant situation.
Yeah.
And then having them immediately say, I need to go potty. Like, I would just leave. And
oh, man. Yes, that was... And you can imagine, because that was my first experience with in the foster care system. So, yeah, the story Alex is referencing, this was with our first intake, foster care intake. Again, there was a sibling group, brother, sister, and they had just had a visit with mom and dad at DHS. So I work in Bentonville. We live in Fayetteville. So their visit was at the DHS office in Bentonville. So after the visit, obviously I work up there, so it was convenient. I'll just swing by and pick them up, and then we'll come back home. So I swing by, pick them up, and then on the drive home, the little girl, I mean, she's just crying hysterically, just nonstop, and totally understand. She just saw mommy and daddy, and then she got yanked away and put in the car with me to head home. I mean, she's just crying, top of her lungs, just hysterical. And driving from Bentonville to Fayetteville, that's a long drive and a long endurance of listening to, windows rolled up.
A nightmare for any parent in any situation.
So on the drive home, I decided, you know what, I will stop at McDonald's and get her a Happy Meal, a shake, anything, just to calm her down, just to help her, calm down. So we stop at the McDonald's on Joyce, by the mall.
It's in Fayetteville.
In Fayetteville. Sorry. Yeah. I know not everybody is from...
No, it's fine. So Bentonville is where Walmart headquarters is. Tim does not work for Walmart. He works for its brother, Sam's Club. But it's like, 30 minutes away from Fayetteville, like top to bottom.
Yep.
So
anyway, we stop in McDonald's, and obviously my thought was, let's go inside. We can take our time. She can stretch her legs. Excuse me. And so we park, and then as soon as we walk in the door, older brother decides that he needs to go use the bathroom. He needs to go potty. And in my head, again, the math, I just start running the math in my head. I'm like, oh man, this is going to be hard, because I clearly cannot, she's, I think, how old was she? She was 3. She was 2. He was 4. I have to take her. Like, I can't. Yeah, and I can't send him to the bathroom by himself. He's 4 years old, and I can't leave her out here. She's 2 years old. I got to take her with me, and
can't go in the women's bathroom.
I can't go to the women's bathroom, and I mean, we walk in the door, and obviously people are looking. Everyone turns to look and see who just walked in, and they're staring. And this 6'3" black guy with 2 Caucasian kids, one in his arm. One he's holding, and the other, walking, holding his arm. And we make a quick dash to the bathroom, right? And I'm thinking, no joke, I prepped myself mentally to walk out to the cops waiting for me.
Right. Which sadly isn't, that could have happened easily.
I mean, it didn't happen, thankfully. But yes, I mentally prepared myself for that to be the case. Like, I would walk out and there would be cops waiting, to question me who I was, obviously, and why do I, who are these kids that are with me, and so on. But like I said, that didn't happen. But again, those are things that I have to deal with.
Right.
Am I being overreactive? Possibly. Am I being, I don't know, paranoid, or I don't know. Maybe I am, to a degree, right? But I think, again, just the world we live in today, I don't think that's far-fetched.
Right.
Maybe the environment we live in, as in Northwest Arkansas, we're good. Like, I'm good. I'm okay. Anywhere else in the country or other parts of the country, that may have been true reality for someone else that looked like me, that was in the same scenario as I was.
Well, 3 hours away down in Little Rock.
Right.
I mean, or not to mention like Detroit or something.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's just something, that I have to deal with, being in the family, multiracial dynamic that I'm in. It's just the reality that I have to deal with. And with our foster daughter, for example, she's obviously, we're still working through their case, and we're still on the path of reunification with her bio parents. But should that, for whatever reason, switch to adoption, right? We've clearly
no question,
right? Yeah. There's no question. We've shared with the state that we were open to adopting her, and I'm 100%, 100%, 20% on board with that happening, right? But so obviously, I've run everything through my mind. What would that look like if we were to adopt her and she was to, become truly one of us?
Right.
Today, she knows. I don't believe she knows any different. I'm just being honest. This is my relationship with her.
Right.
I'm basing my comment off of. But she will get to a point where she will start to realize and start asking questions, right? And I've mentally, thought through, how would I answer those questions? How would Ashley answer those questions? Would she start to resent me, or would she start to resent us? Because it's pretty obvious that she doesn't belong, right? She would not look anything like her siblings, because her siblings are mixed. And by true definition, honestly, society defines or identifies her siblings as black.
Right.
Would she start to resent us? Would she start to be rebellious because she's
the youngest child, so she's already a little rebellious?
No joke. But yeah, I've thought through these things and wondered what that would look like. But that does not deter me from, the fact that if we were to go down that path, there's no question. Yes, we would take her in, and we're open to adopting her.
The way that having a very colorful family has changed the way that we approach certain things, because we're intentional about making sure we are close friends with families who are also very colorful or have other adopted children, or the parents were adopted. And having that as kind of a constant dialogue and being part of our normal is something that's really important to us, to show the kids that it's not something completely different or out of the ordinary. There are a lot of other families like us, and just making sure that they have role models and interactions, and getting out of our bubble, and making sure we're taking them to cultural events and things like that, so that they are more familiar with a colorful setting of people.
Today I'm sitting down with Faith Jibas, who you work with the Marshallese Education Initiative. Is that right?
Yes, the Marshallese Educational Initiative.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about just yourself and what you do.
Well, I am their Special Projects Director. I've been with MEI since conception, 2013. So I was one of the founding board members, but then I left for another job. So I've been back with MEI for about a month now as their Special Projects Director.
Awesome. And are you originally from the Marshall Islands, or were you born in the U.S.?
I was born in Missouri, Springfield, Missouri, but I am Marshallese.
Gotcha. So are you first generation, or were your parents born here too?
Yes, I'm first generation.
That's so awesome. So Obviously you know so much about the culture. You work within, a education for Marshallese initiative, and your parents are Marshallese, your whole family's a Marshallese. So I'm so excited to be able to chat with you because, especially in this area of the country, we have so many Marshallese adoptions, and that's part of the point of this episode is just to talk about how we as adoptive parents can do better to preserve culture and to make sure that that our kids know where they came from and know who they are. So to jump in a little bit to that, how is adoption viewed in the Marshallese community?
Well, really, the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. We literally live by those words. Community and family is everything to Marshallese people. So, really, adoption, and it's kind of second nature. So if I had a sister that couldn't have a baby and I had plenty, or 3 or 4, I would give her one of mine. And that's a natural thing for Marshallese to do, to give family members one of their babies, so that they could be blessed with a child. And that goes for extended families as well. It could be, we don't see each other as generational cousins. If we're cousins in some way, then we're cousins. It's not first cousin, second cousin, third cousin, or if they're my auntie, it's kind of the way that if they're related to my mom, if they're the same generation as my mom or my dad, and they would be my auntie or my uncle. So that's kind of how we see each other as family. And so giving one of our children up for adoption to our family members is natural and something that's done often in our community. Giving our children outside of the community, that's something that has started, in the last 20, 30 years. So it's still somewhat new to the Marshallese people.
And now I know that, I kind of know the answer to this question, but I know that there has been some confusion on the part of the Marshallese community on what exactly that adoption means when it's to people outside of the Marshallese community, right?
Right. Yeah, because it's completely different. It's usually a closed adoption with our family members. We grow up, if I were to adopt, because I adopted our youngest is adopted. She's adopted by my husband's cousin, and from my husband's cousin, and she knows her as auntie, but she also knows that that's her adopted mom. That's her real mom, and so it's different. We raise each other's children, and whenever you adopt outside of the community, outside the Marshallese, it's usually a closed adoption. And so that's something that's misunderstood a lot with women giving up their children for adoption.
Right. And so that's why I think this conversation is so important, because we're able to talk about those misunderstandings. And I know that just legally, there's a lot of work being done to prevent that from happening going forward. And I know you've been a part of that to various degrees, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And so on that note, how can we want to talk about in this conversation how we as the adoptive parents, and you've adopted as well, but obviously it was within your community, so it's a bit different. But as white people, how can we as the adoptive parents be better? And I think that even though specifically where we live, there's a huge Marshallese population, and there's still so little known about such an awesome culture. So what do you think, what are some of the things about Marshallese culture that adoptive parents should definitely know?
Well, I think one of the things is, and I understand there's some insecurities with families that are adopting outside their culture, and not really understanding the culture. I think understanding the culture would be one of the things that people should do before adopting, someone out that's not of their race or from their country. And I think that would help the child to understand where they came from if they don't live in an area that has such a large population of Marshallese people. But also that Marshallese, the family will never think of them as someone else's child. The family is always going to think of them as part of their family. And so, but they're not trying to take the child back in any way, but they're always going to consider them as family, and they will adopt the American family or non-Marshallese family as, their brother or sister, whoever took the child. So, it's all about the sense of family and keeping the family together and keeping the family close. But yeah, there's just, I think just understanding our culture, the way that the way that we view our sense of family, I think that's something that should be studied by anyone adopting from any culture, really, not just Marshallese. But yeah, I met a family that came from South Carolina. We just celebrated our Constitutional Day here in Arkansas, and this family came. They adopted 3 children from the Marshall Islands and 4, I think, from Uganda or something. And but they came to observe what we do, and because the children haven't been back for a while. But I just thought it was really neat how still, even though they don't know anything about their culture, they're really eager to know everything about their culture. And the family was open to bringing them here, driving all the way from South Carolina to show them parts of their culture. And so it was really neat to see their eyes light up because they see so many Marshallese people, and they felt like they felt a sense of identity, I think, in seeing people that are like them. Because they said that there are no islanders in South Carolina that they know of. And so, it's usually just, I think they said there's a huge Asian community and a huge Hispanic community, but no islanders in that part of it where they grew up. So I think seeing people from where they come from was really good for them. And yeah, they wanted to know where all the Marshallese stores were so that they could buy handicrafts, and they met a lot of their family members here that were here, and it was a good reunion for them.
That's really cool. And so my first question would be, I know that you said that you thought that was neat. But in these interviews that we've been doing for these episodes, we've talked a lot about the fear on the part of adoptive parents, just that they won't belong or that they feel uncomfortable. And so how do you think, do you think that everyone else there shared your view that this was a good thing, that this was awesome and encouraging, or do you think that that they saw that as an offense, like you don't, to the American or the adoptive parents, just like, you don't belong here, this isn't your thing, or do you think it was accepted by everyone?
No, I feel like it was accepted by everyone. The children, they grew up well. They're all in college right now. And just to see them having a good life and that they had a happy life, I think that's what we want for any child. And for every child that's adopted, really. But the fact that the family was here and they engaged in the activities and took pictures and looked for other family members that they were related to, I think that all contributed to them not feeling like they were isolated or that they were not a part of the community. I think they all felt like they were somewhat a part of the community. Marshalleys they're pretty accepting. There are those that don't want children to be adopted outside of the community, and they have strong views about that because they want the culture to stay within the child. But there are a lot that embrace people who love our children, and so it goes both ways.
Yeah, and I mean, that brings me to another question, was that how can adoptive parents better honor their kids' culture and heritage to kind of find that compromise there?
Yeah, I think just being open to taking them to Marshalleys functions, like we have like our first birthdays, they're very important. And so if they hear that there's a birthday party or, that they know of a relative that's having a birthday party, bringing them to that would be, something, just engaging them in different activities that are very important to Marshallese people, like our Constitution Day. That was a huge weekend for us, and just learning about learning about our culture. There's so much online these days. You can just get on the internet and learn as much as you want to learn. So, I think teaching their children where they come from and the history of their culture and the history of why Marshallese and Americans have a relationship, I think all of that is vital for their kids to know their identity.
Right. And so if you had to pick just a couple of interesting parts of the Marshallese culture to share with the listeners, what would they be?
Well, yeah, I'm really proud of our sense of community and how we take care of each other. And I mean, it doesn't matter if we're not first cousins, even if we don't know each other, but we know that we're related. If we just met, we're going to treat each other like we've known each other forever, because they're our family. We accept them as our family. We love them, just like we love our brothers and our sisters and our aunties and uncles that we've known all of our life. So I think that's one thing that is great about our culture. I think that's it, really, just our sense of community and how we stick together, how we love to keep our culture alive, even if we haven't been to the Marshall Islands in so many years. Some have never even been to the Marshall Islands, but they know our customs and they know songs and they know how to speak Marshallese. And so I think just keeping our culture alive, I think that's one thing that we strive to do, and I'm proud of that.
And I think that's so great. And I wanted to go back to something you said earlier, and you were talking about that family from North Carolina and how they didn't know of any other islanders that lived there. And growing up in Missouri, like I said, I know that there's a large Marshallese community here in our part of the country. Is there in Missouri too, or do you understand that kind of isolation? Did you feel like you had a large community where you grew up?
Oh, no. My parents, they were the only Marshallese in Missouri for a while. And I think sixth grade. It was sixth grade whenever my brother and sister came from the Marshall Islands, and because my parents came here to go to school, and they left the two older children in the Marshall Islands because they were only supposed to be gone for a couple years. But then I was born, and then they had more children, and so it got harder to go back to the Marshall Islands. So we were in Springfield, and we were the only Marshallese family for many years. And then sixth grade, my brother and sister came from the Marshall Islands. My parents finally saved enough money to bring them over, and then from then we just looked for other Marshallese communities, and they were all outside of Missouri. We would drive to Oklahoma, we'd drive to Arkansas, just to find Texas, just to find other Marshallese people to engage in Marshallese functions. And so yeah, I was in sixth grade before I was introduced to anything in my culture. And now in Springfield there's probably 8 families that live in Springfield. And so the community is still very small in Missouri. But and so moving here, it's only 2 hours from Springfield to Springdale, was kind of culture shock for me. And the diversity, it was just so different from where I grew up, because there isn't a large Islander community in Springfield either. So I could identify with what the kids were saying, how, so yeah, I could identify with her when she was telling me, this is so neat to see so many Marshallese. And, because that's kind of how it was for me too.
Yeah.
Growing up. Yeah.
But I think it's important to note how far you guys went to try and find other Marshallese people, or just a sense of community, that you traveled states, and to think that could be what a kid is growing up in, that they're isolated. They just don't feel like they fit in, or they feel, I don't know. I don't want to say left out, because obviously, we would hope that they would be in a loving family, but just to feel like they don't look like those other people, and they want to find people who share their heritage and share their culture. I mean, imagine being a kid who didn't have the ability to travel states, or who had parents that didn't have that much concern for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why there is somewhat of a stigmatism with some of, the Marshallese people, and adopting outside of the community is because of that very reason. They want every Marshallese child to know where they come from, and to know their identity as Marshallese. Even here with this huge community, we're still influenced by Western culture, and we're influenced by the American culture. So it's slightly changing, and it changes with every generation. We're trying our hardest to keep it preserved, but there's things that influence our children, and so our culture here is different than the culture in Marshall Islands, but we still try very hard to keep it as close to what it is in the Marshall Islands. It's just, but it is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you were to give advice just to 2 different people groups. So first of all, if you were to give advice to a Marshallese child who's been adopted, and maybe they do feel left out, or maybe they don't have a great sense of community wherever they are, what would you say to them to learn more about where they come from and who they are?
Well, if they didn't have access to the internet, I think that's the thing that teaches all of us how, so much about our culture, because a lot of everything were not in history books. The relationship with the U.S. and the Marshallese, and how I didn't know any of that until I was an adult.
Wow.
And yeah, so I learned so much after the fact, after I had already gone to college, and we're not in the history books, and so everything that you can learn about our culture, textbook-wise, is really on the internet. And then there's a lot of books out there. One that Gift Johnson wrote, "Don't Ever Whisper." That's a good book about our history. And
Don't Ever Whisper.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. But I would tell them to just try and find Marshallese communities if they know that they're Marshallese. Try and find Marshallese communities that are near, so that they could somehow engage in different functions that we have here. And I don't really know. I don't know, like, what if they were limited. I don't. That's internet is what it. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'll link to that book, Don't Ever Whisper, in the show notes, so you guys can check it out. But I wanted to ask, and this is a little bit of a side note, but you were talking about you didn't realize why the Marshall Islands and the United States have the connection that they do. Do you think there's any resentment on the part of the Marshallese people for all of that? Even though I know it was a long time ago, but still.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, but our people are still suffering because of what happened.
Absolutely.
So, sicknesses are very prevalent in cancer, and cancer and diabetes are the two worst sicknesses that we're dealing with. And there's unknown sicknesses that we're now dealing with, and that doctors don't understand why our people are having these different sicknesses. So yeah, it's still, even though it was a long time ago, our land is still contaminated, and my husband's from Bikini. He's never been there. And I'm from Runglip. I've never been there. So, we can't just go visit our land and live on our land. So yeah, it is still, it's still, something that we deal with every day. And so, I don't want to say that people are, bitter. I think we don't want the different stigmatisms, here in America. That's something that bothers me, that we're, illegal, or that, because most of our people are at poverty or below, that we're here, to live off of Americans. I mean, these are some of the stigmatisms that we deal with here in Arkansas. And so that's something that bothers me personally.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say also, the opportunities that we've had here in America, and the opportunity to live in America and to be able to come back and forth because of the sacrifice that our people made for the U.S. military, I think also a blessing, because I feel like our kids are getting a better education here. The education in Marshall Islands is getting better, but it's pretty low in comparison to the educational standard here in America. And the living, is, I believe, is better. Living in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house here in America is standard, but if you had that in the Marshall Islands, that's a mansion. And so, so I believe the quality of life is different. It's different. I don't want to say it's better. It's just different. And but it's a blessing to be here in America. But there are, we still deal with the effects of what happened from all the testings of the bombs in the 40s and 50s and 60s. So, yeah.
Growing up, like you said, that there was not a lot of Marshallese community where you grew up, but growing up here, you have kids that go to the schools in this area and that have, non-Marshallese peers. So what are some of the ways that adoptive parents can expect their children to be treated, or what are some of the things that they might struggle with, just stereotypically or otherwise? And more specifically, how can those adoptive parents walk their children through these things?
I think just loving the child and making them feel secure in themselves. Mm-hmm. I think that really is the answer to a child growing up healthy and healthy-minded. Not sure. I mean, and then I think it would be easier for them to accept that they're different, because that's one of the things that all adopted children feel. It doesn't matter even if they're a white child being adopted by a white family, they feel like an outsider if they've been adopted. So I just believe just loving the child as much as they can and teaching them about their culture, I think that will help them to become healthy adults and to be able to deal with their differences and whatever they might feel, whatever feelings that they might have in being adopted. I think that it would be more accepted. That's one of the things. One of my good friends, she has started a nonprofit to help parents adopt children. Her name is Renee Sasser. She's adopted a lot of children, and they came from broken homes, and she just loved them. She just loved them, and now they're healthy adults that they know that they've been adopted, and they love people, and they're good people, and that's basically what she did. She let them know that that they were Marshallese and taught them what she could teach them about their culture, and but they grew up in Kansas City, away from a Marshallese community, but they're healthy and loving adults, and she's an inspiration.
Definitely. Well, yeah, thank you for that. And did you have anything else that you would want to share with our listeners? And like I said, I mean, most of the listeners for this area, they might have Marshallese children that they've adopted or that are in their home, and they're wanting to do better. They're wanting to not disappoint those people who frown upon adoptions outside of the Marshallese community. They want to make them proud and show these kids who they are and how to be proud of being Marshallese.
Yeah, we have a lot of we have two nonprofits here, Arkansas Coalition of Marshallese, and then we have the Marshallese Educational Initiative. Then we also have the KBE Annex Office, which is the office for the Bikini Atoll government in the Marshall Islands. It's an annex to that office. And then we have the consulate office here, the RMI consulate office. So there are lots of point of references that people can come to want to know, hey, I adopted a child from the Marshall Islands, and I just need to know what's going on so I can get them involved in the culture and somehow and learn more about the culture. And we can guide them to, whatever birthday's going on, at what time, where, and when, or whatever special function that might be happening with our different organizations, and they could get that sense of community that way. I would encourage all adopted parents to try and reach out to the Marshallese community and introduce your children to their culture, and not to be scared to do that, because we as a community embrace it. We embrace families that are wanting their kids to know more about their culture. And so, as a majority, I mean, there are some, but, there aren't a lot. And we don't want anyone to feel like an outsider. So, I would just encourage just to try it and to see how it goes. You never know until you actually do it. So hopefully their experience will be good.
I just wanted to be educated. I have just wanted to branch out and just reach out to people of other races and just ask questions and just know that I'm not going to know all the answers, and know that always have them understand where their history comes from. And I think also just in our world today, just racial tension we're more aware now of what's happening now, and we want to be educated, and we want to know how to answer these questions for them.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I think it's so important, and I just wanted to give a couple caveats and some things that are on my heart. As adoptive parents, it's our job to help our children in this. This is so hard, but we want to walk that balance being between making our kids feel incredibly loved and wanted and cherished, but also raising them to love who they are and have absolutely no shame in it. It's our responsibility to not feign color blindness, but to see and fully love and appraise and celebrate their ethnicity and their heritage. I also want to reiterate that this is absolutely not another white woman trying to claim this conversation. I want to be the most effective ally that I can be and simply be the catalyst for this topic. This is why it was so imperative that I not rely on the opinions of white parents of minority children, but I just wanted to feature guests who could actually teach us something, not just share experiences gleaned from their children. I would never want that to sound harsh or to shame adoptive parents who are doing the absolute best they can. And there are some great opinions out there of parents who have walked this road with their minority ethnicity children. But I just desperately want my heart to be seen in this. And so I appreciate you guys for listening, and look out for episode 2 coming next week. Thank you for listening to the Adoptive Mom Podcast. I know this stuff is hard, and I hope you found encouragement here. Remember, you are enough, and you're doing a great job. God wants to be at the center of this journey, and He is big enough to redeem all of our mistakes. Don't forget to check out show notes and other resources at theadoptivemompodcast.com. Thanks again for listening.